back with Big Brother Jake, Sunday at 6, 5 Central.
All I can say is, wow.
Only on the Family Channel.
Thank you and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of the 700 Club. And today we've got a smashing report from the Soviet Union. Very good.
I think Michael Little's going to join us.
Michael
I don't want to
Little.
steal his thunder.
We won't steal his thunder, but the reports, the surveys have come in, and it is extraordinary what we're hearing.
Wonderful.
But on this program, once again, it's showdown time in the Middle East. Saddam Hussein is blatantly defying the UN Security Council in a standoff that could lead to serious repercussions. We'll have more on that story coming up.
And also ahead, the chilling story of a woman completely absorbed in the occult.
There was that feeling of connectedness. That's what I would say it was. It was such a strong feeling of connectedness. Like you just felt like you were kind of melting into something, you know, becoming, everything was all connected together. The ultimate goal is just to have that experience of merging into the absolute and never coming back.
But Mary Jo Kaiser does come back to a new age experience that becomes a nightmare just ahead.
Plus, a minister who's also an acrobat and clown. He calls himself the Great Benefucci. And,
Yeah, great. Anybody have some spaghetti sauce?
stay tuned. We'll find out how the Benefucci's doing today and how he's changing lives through laughter. But on a much more serious note, in the news, Saddam Hussein has apparently decided to just say no. Hussein is defying the United Nations Security Council, and that may ultimately mean more military action against him. Deborah Whitson files this report.
Saddam Hussein just isn't going to take it anymore. He's telling the UN he's not going to let it monitor any future Iraqi building or purchasing of weapons. The UN official in charge of dismantling Iraqi weapons says that's a blatant violation of the ceasefire agreement that ended the Gulf War. The UN monitoring is crucial since Iraq has shown over and over again it's willing to do anything to get its hands on nuclear and other weapons of mass destruction. UN Inspector David Kay.
If Saddam survives and the world loses its interest, Yugoslavia, the Soviet Union break up, something else takes attention, that you'll see a strong, militarily alive Iraq emerge, and suddenly he will announce, I have a nuclear weapon.
The Security Council may start discussing Saddam's defiant stand as soon as today. The Council has authorized the use of force in the past to get him to comply with its resolutions. That's what led to the Gulf War. Meanwhile, Iraq is also refusing to discuss any sale of its oil. The UN was going to let Iraq sell some oil so it could feed its hungry population. But Saddam says as long as the UN wants to tell him how to spend the oil money, he'd rather just let his people go without the food. In past months, Allied officials have hinted they might be willing to take military action if it seems Saddam really was about to starve his own people to death. President Bush hasn't hidden the fact that he'd like to see Saddam overthrown, whether by rebel forces or by coup. But he's also refused to rule out the U.S. military going back into action if Saddam violates UN ceasefire agreements. The dictator is a thorn in Bush's side. His continued defiant rule has often ruined the sense of total victory after the Gulf War. And now, by refusing to go along with a crucial part of the ceasefire agreement, Saddam seems to be daring the Allied leaders to do something about it. I'm Deborah Whitson, CBN News.
Incredible. We should have gotten rid of him when the chance presented itself, and we failed in that mission. And he will be a thorn in our side, just like the Canaanites were in the sides of the Israelis back in the biblical days.
I read a thing in The Economist a couple of editions back when a lot of his people prayed that we would take him out because they didn't know what to do. I mean, they can't stand up against him, but they hoped that we would do it for them.
It was a failure of resolve. It was a gimmick. It may have been persuasion by the Saudis. There's some rumor that the Saudis did not want Iran and the Shiites to come moving into a vacuum in Iraq, and they'd rather have a devil they knew than a devil they were not too familiar with. And in my estimation, it was a tragic policy decision. We'll have to see how it works.
What do you think would happen, though? I mean, if the UN, UN are not going to back off now. Do you think he'll back down one more time?
There's no way we're going back to war. We might send some planes over there and blow up something or other, but as far as you know, no way. No way. Can we go in and really enforce an action against him again?
If the United Nations did begin another military action against Iraq, the Iraqi people would once again suffer. But one group is already suffering inside Iraq, persecuted Chaldean Christians. Linda Freeman has that story and more in today's CBN News Roundup.
Following the Gulf War, the world worried about the plight of Kurdish refugees from Iraq. Herded into dirty, ill-supplied refugee camps just over the Turkish border, the Kurds at least had one thing going for them: they're Muslim. But there are other refugees now from the north of Iraq who are not getting worldwide attention. They are the Chaldean Christians living in Kurdish territory and being persecuted by both the Iraqis and the Kurds. This home video shows the Christian farming village of Chisra in northern Iraq before it was leveled by the Iraqi army. Now Chisra is no longer green. The church bell tower is silent. In fact, there's no longer even a trace of where it once stood. This video of Chisra was shot in late December. 120 Chaldean families who speak the original Aramaic language of Jesus fled into the hills following the destruction of their village. Thousands of other villages like Chisra have reportedly been destroyed as well. But the Chaldean refugees aren't faring much better outside their villages. Christian Solidarity International, or CSI, a worldwide religious freedoms advocacy group, told CBN News the Chaldeans are turned away from Kurdish refugee camps because they are Christians. In Azerbaijan, Muslims have a Christian stronghold in a death grip and are poised to overrun the region's Christian capital city. The Armenian city of Stepanakert has been literally under siege since late December. Until very recently, however, relatively few have died compared to the potential 180,000 lives now in the balance. Over the weekend, it appears the Muslim Azerbaijanis added another 1,000 or so troops to their forces occupying the hills around the city. And according to Christian Solidarity International, the trapped Armenian Christians are awaiting the final death blows. An observation team of CSI representatives, including a member of the British Parliament, returned from the area this week. They report the situation is grave. The Christian Armenians have sent out a desperate plea for international attention in the hopes that the West or the United Nations will intervene before it is too late. Linda Freeman, CBN News.
First time I've even heard about that. You know, it's just as if it's in the corner of the world, and when Christians are massacred, it's as if the world press doesn't care.
Isn't that incredible that it wouldn't even get... I mean, I've never even seen a little column on it. I've seen absolutely nothing on it.
It's a major massacre in Azerbaijan, but the idea is, hey, these are Muslims, so let them do their thing, and if they wipe out some Christians, tough luck.
There's so much suffering in the world, though, isn't it? It just seems as if the whole earth is groaning.
Well, we're going to see it more and more. As I've said, it's relative calm this year. I don't think there's going to be any major war. There's some of these little things around, but it's just waiting for some big explosion, and it's not going to take too much longer. Well, after the Gulf War, ladies and gentlemen, a new round of Middle East peace talks began. The goal was to bring peace between Israel and her Arab neighbors. But there's a major stumbling block on that road to peace, the question of the holy city, Jerusalem. Does it belong to Israel or the Arabs? CBN News Middle East correspondent Connie Moose examines those vital questions.
Israel's capital, Jerusalem, is one of the most disputed capitals in the Middle East. The Jewish state demands that the city stays undivided. Palestinians want at least the Arab part of the city as their capital.
Well, I don't think that any solution could be a comprehensive, everlasting solution without the issue of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is considered for the Palestinians as the heart of any entity, political entity, and they cannot survive without Jerusalem. If you remove Jerusalem from the occupied territories, then the occupied territories is nothing.
The city is actually already divided. The 320,000 Jews who live in Jerusalem rarely enter the eastern part of the city. In that part, Israeli army and police forces try to keep law and order, among the 135,000 Palestinians. Daily arrests are made among the Arab population who refuse to accept Israel's presence in the city. But Israelis are clear about the future of this city and stay with the decision made more than 40 years ago to make Jerusalem their capital.
Jerusalem has been the capital of the Jewish nation for the last 3,000 years. It is the place of the prophets, the place of the Jewish kings, the place where the Jewish people were formed and defined themselves. I think that all Jews, all Israelis believe that Jerusalem has to remain a Jewish city, a united city, and we will not let the walls be rebuilt here. This is not going to become a redivided Berlin.
Jerusalem is holy for Jews, Christians and Muslims. When the city was partly under Arab control before 1967, there was only limited access for Jews and Christians. That has not happened with Israelis in power. But Palestinians and Jewish citizens don't believe in peace with a clear solution.
Jerusalem is for Palestinians. This is for our government. Yes. And I don't think, yes, Arafat government, they give Jerusalem for Israel people.
I'm not sure that giving up Jerusalem means peace. I don't think there's any way to guarantee that. I don't think it's a fair question because I don't think that there's any way to guarantee that giving up Jerusalem would mean peace.
The future of the city will continue to be part of the ongoing negotiations. A solution that will satisfy all parties seems impossible. For the Israelis, there is no doubt about the future of their city. The same counts for the Palestinians. Nobody believes that Israel will give 1 inch of the city away to anybody. If the Palestinians continue to fight for the city, it could mean for the Israelis the end of the peace process. Connie Moos, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Nice, Connie.
Pretty interesting. And everything that's happening in the world, as far as we're concerned, that's probably the most key area, isn't it?
Sheila, there's no question. You know, Jesus said it, Jerusalem shall be trodden underfoot of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Now, the first great king who took over Jerusalem was Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, of Iraq, if you will, in 586 BC. Well, from then until 1967, there were Gentiles in control of one part of Jerusalem or the other. In 67, the thing shifted, and I believe the clock of prophecy began. But there is no way that God is going to allow that to happen, to divide that city again. I mean, and the Jews will fight to the very last man, woman, and child to defend it. We're talking about Masada, we're talking about a last-ditch stand. They will not give up Jerusalem.
What about, a question about the Antichrist. Some scholars have written about the Antichrist will arise and eventually sign a peace treaty over Jerusalem. What do you feel about that?
Well, we could see a United Nations thing. This New World Order has all the ingredients of fulfilling some Bible prophecy, and obviously the New World Order has targeted Israel as its next victim, if I can use that term. If they're obdurate in this peace process, they will continue to press. Now, they may make a peace treaty and say, okay, you can keep Jerusalem, you give up the West Bank, and the Jews might go along with it. I doubt it, but they might. But that treaty, whatever it is, would be broken ultimately because the Arabs, the Palestinians, will not give up that city, which of course is the city of David. It's the city of Solomon. It was the Jewish capital of the kings of Judah since the year 1000 BC. I mean, this is not a, quote, Arab land at all.
Moving away from news to what's happening in God's Word, is the Antichrist around at the moment? What do you think?
I don't have any idea.
Really?
I don't know whether, you know, the Bible says the spirit of Antichrist is already in the world, and that was back in biblical days. And I think there's a spirit of Antichrist right now. Whether there's a human being walking the face of the earth, I just don't know. There have been people who assume that, but I just think that the march is going on, that we will set up a world government which will have enormous power, and in that milieu will come forth a dictatorial leader like Hitler or Stalin or something, and who will probably fulfill the Antichrist image, symbol of the Bible.
Well, here at home, a new strategy to keep abortion legal is causing division amongst pro-abortion forces. John Black has this report from Washington.
Disagreement among Democrats